Hello everyone! Today we're going to talk about a project that I've been working on for a long while and that I hope to release sometime in the future. This project is incredibly dear to me, so I decided to finally talk about the main characters on my channel. First of all, I'd like to explain a little bit about the project. This comic is a reboot of my first ever comic, Pumpkin Camp. Pumpkin Camp was made when I was around 15-16 years old, and it was an experiment more than anything. The story wasn't very well planned and the art was very rushed, and I was more worried about the quantity rather than the quality of the pages. Designs and style weren't all that appealing and the colors were downright hideous. Perhaps I'm being a bit too harsh, but still. I ended up giving up on the story altogether and stopped posting it at the end of chapter 2. But I still felt like the characters and setting had potential, so I kept them on the back burner, and eventually I started to work on this story again after I gained more interest in mysteries, horror, and internet analog horror. Pieces of media like Gravity Falls, The Quarry, BuzzFeed Unsolved Supernatural, The Ghost Files, as well as aesthetics like cryptidcore, dreamcore, and liminal spaces ended up being the biggest inspirations for this version of what is now called Cryptid Lake. I've settled on a style, aesthetic, and tone, and now I'm a lot happier with how things are going. I'd like to note that I've actually made a beta version of the first few pages of this comic as a proof of concept. These pages are currently available to read on Tapas, link in the description. Take into consideration that the pages are currently being redrawn and that a few things have changed, mostly character designs and set designs. Once I'm ready to start publishing the comic, probably sometime in 2024, these pages will be switched by the definitive/final version of the comic. And now, without further ado, let me introduce you to the main characters. We'll start with Enid. Enid is an 18-year-old witch that works as an art counselor in a summer camp. She is an astrology witch, which means that most of her abilities revolve around light and stars. She can also theoretically read the stars and perform other types of divination, but she always thought that casting spells was much more exciting than trying to predict the future. She has been studying magic for most of her life, and she has always worked really hard to be able to be the best she can be. Eventually, she decided she would come up with new spells. Because of this, most of the spells she casts are experimental and might not work exactly how she intends them to. She is a perfectionist, like any artist, and so she'll never give up until they are just right. Other people might even call her stubborn. Because she's a witch, she always carries around her witch's gem. In her case, she carries it as a hair clip, and it has the shape of an eye, complete with 3 golden teardrops dangling from her gem. Just to clarify, the way I design and write witches makes so that every witch is born with a witch's gem. So a gem that is part of their biology and it gives them their magical abilities. Usually witches never separate from their gems and they usually carry them in some sort of accessory. She is also very curious and can get sucked in by her own interests. These interests include filmmaking, mysteries, horror, internet horror, supernatural, and cryptozoology. She spends a lot of her time listening to podcasts on these subjects as well as researching about places nearby. Cryptozoology is especially interesting to her, and she spends a lot of time trying to draw the various cryptids based on their descriptions. She would love to be able to see a cryptid one day and take a video of them. She is very shy around new people, and she tends to feel a little embarrassed when discussing her love of mysteries with new people for the first time. Despite everything, she is very sweet and protective. Her best friend in the whole world is her sister Willow. Willow is a 12-year-old witch and Enid's younger sister. This little girl isn't sure which coven to choose in the future, so she still isn't a particular type of witch yet. She also has a witch's gem, but she also hasn't decided in which accessory she wants to carry it on. So she still carries her gem in her pocket. That's why it's not visible in her design, but rest assured she has one. Willow is a very extroverted girl, always very enthusiastic and very optimistic. She has a habit of adopting shy kids into her friend group, since they remind her so much of her older sister. When it comes to magic, she is a late bloomer. This means that she has yet to show significant levels of magic. She can perform little spells here and there, but she can't do much else. Because of this, she often feels embarrassed. Her sister has always been by her side and always tries to help her out on her magical training. Enid would never give up on Willow, even if they had to stay up all night in order for Willow to master a small spell. Both sisters share the same interests, with Willow preferring ghost stories and the paranormal. Aside from this, she also has a knack for sports. She's very athletic and is naturally good at most sports, even though she prefers team sports, such as football. She also loves the outdoors, camping and cooking. Enid tends to insist that Willow never cook without her around. It seems she doesn't trust Willow to not burn the kitchen down. Up we have Oliver. Oliver is also an 18-year-old that works as a camp counselor in Shadai Lake. Probably the most popular counselor, Oliver appears to be a very confident young man that is quick to befriend most people. He is as loyal as one can get, and he would do pretty much anything for his friends. Despite being loved by most, Oliver tends to feel very anxious about people leaving him, often feeling sad or angry when people just stop talking to him or leave without telling him anything. Oliver hates being alone and tries his best to always have company. Oliver and Enid first meet when she joined the camp counselor team. At first they didn't see eye to eye, but they quickly became close friends, with both of them working together most of the time despite being in completely different departments. Oliver teaches sports, and as such she gets along with Willow pretty well. When they spend time together, Oliver often teaches Willow new tricks with the football ball so she can impress the other kids. Oliver is the non-believer of the group, often disregarding some of the beliefs of others when it comes to mysteries. By always trying to explain them away with logic, he still seems to love listening to the other members of the group talk about cryptids and the paranormal. I believe it's because he admires everyone's dedications to what they love. Oliver's design used to be that of a skeleton, but I decided to change it. Skeleton characters can be very interesting and expressive, but the skeleton design just didn't suit him anymore. His new design is based on a moth, therefore it can be considered a Mothman. Next we have 12-year-old Dolly, a humanoid sheep monster named after the first cloned sheep. Dolly is also a very social person that loves places with a sense of community. This is why she always felt so drawn to cryptozoology, in part because of the sense of community that these types of hobbies entail, but also because her dad used to be pretty into it as a kid, and he recorded most of the mysteries of the area into a journal that he then offered Dolly. Despite loving to be around people, Dolly is a very shy and quiet girl, tending to keep to herself. She doesn't get in trouble, she hates confrontations, and she is also a very scaredy kid. All these traits together make it very difficult for her to explore and hunt for cryptids. In comes Willow. Dolly was the first kid Willow meets at the camp, and they quickly bonded over their shared interests. Willow is also the reason Dolly is trying really hard to come out of her comfort zone, to do what she always wanted to do, explore the camp and find all the cryptids she can. Like Enid, Dolly also loves to draw. Dolly looks up to Enid in that regard, and Enid always tries to help Dolly in her artistic endeavors. Dolly, despite liking Oliver and often finding him to be a very understanding person, absolutely despises his lessons since she has a terrible coordination and is consequently really bad at sports. And finally, we have Harriet, a 14-year-old vampire girl. When I designed Harriet, I designed her with the idea of what it's like to be 14. It's a pretty weird age. You're going through tons of changes, you're trying to discover yourself, and you're dealing with all the puberty nonsense. Because of that, I like to think that Harriet is a girl that is going through her goth phase. She dyes her hair, wears black and plaid, very red eyeshadow, and she even has an undercut. Her beta design leans even more into this idea of a character wearing what is cool for a 14-year-old, but definitely not as cool for older people. But I decided to tone it down a bit. Her makeup is still kinda loud though. She's expressing herself. When it comes to her personality, Harriet is an overachiever. She likes success, and her biggest wish is to be the best at everything. Although, much like Willow, she isn't sure about what to do with her life. All she knows is that she likes to feel superior. She loves to feel like the smartest one in the room. This of course leads to problems with the other kids, especially her brother and Dolly. Even though most kids don't like her very much, they still listen to her in some ways, as she is very confident, practical, and efficient. She can be very blunt when she speaks, and this is the most obvious in her relationship with Dolly. It seems that at some point they got along well, but now Harriet seems to not have much patience for her. On the other hand, she gets along really well with Willow. Willow doesn't seem to mind her blunt nature, and Harriet admires how determined Willow can get. All in all, they are pretty close friends. Harriet doesn't seem to have any particular feeling when it comes to the counselors. She likes their company and she likes that they listen to her, but she also hates that they usually scold her when she is doing something wrong. She wants to be treated like an adult, even though she doesn't act even close to an adult. She is a typical 14-year-old vampire girl. Finally, we have our main cast complete. I hope you liked it, and you can certainly keep your eyes open for more news on this project. More videos about these characters and Cryptid Lake are coming, you can be sure of that. And with that, we get to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, consider leaving a like and subscribe, and until next time, bye!